How's it going, gents? Stand in the Door 1944. Today we're going to be going over one of the deleted scenes from the hit series Band of Brothers. Let's get into it. So we know that the footage that we ended up seeing on the screen for Band of Brothers was only a small percentage of what was actually filmed for the show. And so today we want to go over one of the many deleted sequences that we know was actually filmed, but ended up being removed from the final cut. But before we do that, we want to thank the sponsors of this video, World of Warships. World of Warships is a free-to-play PC game that seeks to give players a taste of naval combat in World War II, with new content for the game coming available every month. This highly detailed game features some of the most historically accurate ships ever rendered into a game, along with highly detailed weather effects, which makes each battle unique and changes the tactics you employ to win the fight. You can choose to play solo to see if you have what it takes to command different classes of vessels, including battleships, aircraft carriers, and submarines, or you can create a division where you can play with friends. Not only can you play World of Warships on PC, but also on console, giving you even more opportunities to join in the action. You can download your copy of World of Warships in the description below, and if you use the coupon code BRAVO, you can get 500 free doubloons, 1.5 million credits, 7 days of premium account time, and a free ship after you complete your first 5 battles. Be sure and take advantage of this special offer before it is too late. Thanks again to World of Warships, and now let's get back to the video. So the deleted sequence we're going to be talking about today comes from the series' 5th episode, Crossroads. At the very beginning of the episode, we see Dick Winters taking a Mark II hand grenade, and he cuts off a bit of black fabric tape with his teeth, and then he wraps it around the spoon of the grenade. Be sure and remember this detail because it is a key factor in the scene coming up. Wrapping tape around the spoon of a hand grenade was actually a really common practice seen by US troops in World War II. The reason that they would do this would be, in the rare case that this pin was ever pulled by accident, the spoon would still remain with the hand grenade, thus preventing it from exploding. So it was basically acting as a safety feature to protect the soldier as well as protect the people that were around them. A few minutes later into the episode, we find Dick Winters along with the 1st Platoon of Easy Company in a shallow ditch. Winters knows that his position is vulnerable, and so he decides that the best defense is a good offense, and he decides to initiate a bayonet charge.
You got no choice.
We see Winters breaking up his assault force into 3 separate attacking groups. 1st squad on the left flank, 3rd squad on the right flank, and then Winters takes the 2nd squad directly up the middle. What we don't see in the episode is that Winters had actually set up 2 1919 machine guns, one in between each of the attacking groups. Those machine gunners and their assistant gunners were actually not members of Easy Company, though they were members of the headquarters company that Winters had requested to support his attack. Those 2 machine gunners would be actually initiating the assault after seeing Lieutenant Peacock throw a red smoke grenade. Those 2 machine guns would then provide covering fire during the entire assault. It would be those 2 machine guns that would actually keep the Germans from spotting Easy Company's advance onto their position. Had those 2 machine guns not been in place, the 1st Platoon might have been seen in the middle of that field, and the story could have wound up quite different than what we actually see displayed. I feel like the real-life events are even more impressive than what was even depicted in the series. So in the episode, we see that the only reason why Dick Winters gets a 75 or 100-yard head start in front of the rest of the 1st Platoon is because of the delayed ignition of his red smoke grenade. However, in reality, the fact is that Winters was just such a PT stud and he had such a major adrenaline dump that he simply outran the entire 1st Platoon. Another thing that we don't see in the series is that there were actually several strands of barbed wire that were strung across that field that ended up tripping Dick Winters and several members of the 1st Platoon. They did complete face plants in the middle of that field during that run, and then they would pick themselves up and keep running. Dick Winters said in interviews after the war that during that run he slipped into a state of mind that he'd never been in before and would never be in again. He said that everyone else, including the Germans that he would soon run into, seemed to slip into slow motion. He said that he felt that he was traveling at normal speed, but everyone else was moving so slow and he couldn't couldn't understand why. So we don't know by what distance, nor by what period of time Dick Winters actually outran the 1st platoon. But what we do know is that this next series of events, which is where our little deleted scene takes place, happened before the 1st platoon reached his position. So Dick Winters reaches the edge of the field, and he jumps up on top of the road embankment, and that's where he runs into the German sentry on the other side of the road. However, he does not engage him with his rifle at that time. Instead, what he does is he wheels around and he drops back to his side of the road embankment, and there he pulls a Mark II hand grenade off of his equipment, pulls the pin, and throws it over the road at the German sentry. At that exact same time, the German sentry had taken one of his potato mashers, pulled the pin, and thrown it at Dick Winters on the other side of the road, so their grenades literally passed each other in midair. And Dick Winters said that as soon as he let go of his hand grenade, he knew that he had made a critical error. Because although he had pulled the pin on the hand grenade, he had forgotten to remove the tape that he had wrapped around the spoon of the grenade, and so he knew that his hand grenade would not detonate on the other side of the road. So, rather than waiting for the German potato masher to go off behind him, he decided to jump up on the road, use the element of surprise, and be able to engage the sentry on the other side of the road at more or less point-blank distance. He said that he was about 2 to 3 steps away. It just so happened that the grenade that sentry had thrown on the other side of the road embankment failed to detonate. So both Winters and the Germans' hand grenades failed to detonate in that particular instance. After killing that German sentry, we know that Dick Winters fired at least 2 full end blocks from his M1 rifle before the 1st platoon started to arrive at his position. And once there, the engagement continued almost exactly as it's depicted in the show. Now, we all know that there was hundreds of stories about Easy Company that never ended up being filmed for the show. And some people will argue that this story about Dick Winters' taped up hand grenade was one of those stories that was never shot. However, there are 4 distinct pieces of evidence that prove that this was actually filmed, but it ended up being removed from the final edit. Our first piece of evidence is that sequence at the very beginning of the episode where we see Dick Winters rip off that piece of tape with his teeth and wrap it around the spoon of his hand grenade. You don't take runtime out of your episode to show little details like that unless it has a purpose later on in the story that furthers the events of that story. Our second piece of evidence is we actually see Dick Winters' character carrying a Mark II pineapple on the left side of his suspenders for the first third of the episode. However, as soon as he starts firing at the Germans with his rifle, all of a sudden this Mark II pineapple is no longer on his shoulder. And they edit very specifically so that it's very difficult to see that continuity mistake. Our third piece of evidence actually comes from the DVD behind-the-scenes photo gallery, where we see this picture, which is clearly taken from the shot where Lieutenant Peacock walks up and identifies the SS collar insignia of the lone sentry that Winters had killed. What do we see in Winters' hand? You guess it, it's that same pineapple grenade. Obviously, for the shot, the reason why Dick Winters walks over to that particular soldier is to pick up his hand grenade that he threw earlier in the episode. And our last piece of evidence comes from later in the episode, where Dick Winters is sitting on the raised road embankment overlooking the battlefield. The whole time that Nixon is speaking with him, if you look, Dick Winters is holding on to that same Mark II pineapple grenade. And in fact, by the end of the scene, we see that he actually unwinds all the tape off of the hand grenade and he wraps it around his fingers before he walks away. If I was to guess as to the reasons why this particular sequence of events was edited out of the episode, was probably because Tom Hanks, who directed it, was trying to alter with time throughout the episode. So he's continually jumping back and forth to the events of the 5th of October and events that were happening later on in October whenever Dick Winters was acting as the battalion executive officer. As a result of that non-linear story progression, they had to kind of mess with the editing and remove this particular sequence of events just because it wouldn't feel quite right with the story, especially with the first shot being Dick Winters running across that opening field and engaging that sentry. Had they taken the time to actually show the grenade exchange between the two of them, it probably would have thrown off the pacing that they were trying to meet. Had the episode been edited in a more traditional linear story progression, like the rest of the episodes of the series had been, this grenade sequence probably would have made the final cut. This kind of makes you wonder what other true stories were actually shot for the series, but ended up not making the final cut. What do you guys think? Should the episode have edited out actual events for the sake of narrative pacing, or should they have tried to cram in as much historical detail and as much of the true events that actually happened? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next one.